Hello and welcome to Protect Ukraine Now YouTube channel. Today I would like to show you a video I've made with a dear friend of mine, a veteran, company commander of the 47th Brigade Mykola Melnyk. This video was recorded in Ukrainian and later translated to English by artificial intelligence. I apologize for roughness of that translation, but certainly it helps those who don't understand Ukrainian. Uh, I will also post the Ukrainian version of this video right after this one. This video is about misconceptions about Ukrainian army. You're going to see Ukrainian army the way it is, no exaggerations, no sugarcoating. Yet, army that's going to win this war.
When talking about the myths of the Russian-Ukrainian war, the main myth is that the Russians are winning. We read this in the news, we read it in some TikTok videos. But in reality, let's just look at the reality in numbers. During the day, we have about 150 skirmishes. Out of those 150 skirmishes, the Russians win 2 or 3, advance somewhere in a completely useless forest, and celebrate this a lot. So, once again, the Russians having an advantage in forces, in people, in equipment, drones, technologies, variations, in missiles. Out of 150 battles, they can win only 2. You know, in any country in the world, in any history, it was said that, well, the country is generally holding on and the enemy is definitely not winning. But we have a simple situation now, which is called Ukraine simply did not show up for the information war. So in the information space, the story goes that Ukrainians are constantly losing, at least for the last 2 years. First, second, this is a myth that the Ukrainian army is already filled with old people and they don't go there. On the one hand, they really are not going there. This wonderful story about a million people reaching the age of 24 has failed. Now it seems from the entire mobilization reserve, which is approximately up to 200,000, but they managed to gather 500 people. Moreover, there is a discussion now about these 500. Who are they really? Well, by a small margin, most of them are people who were already planning to be mobilized in 25. In other words, there are almost no 18-year-olds there. That's true. But the army is not the kind of current they try to show us. The army is not filled with retirees. The army filled with people who generally have a normal, sufficient physical training to perform combat tasks. All these stories about, oh, our kitties are untrained, set to war. Look, in the year 2025, this does not exist. I'll say more, in the year 2024, this did not exist. There were just situations where certain battalions were just messing around on the Dnipro. Did absolutely nothing, suffered from professional alcoholism. Then they were thrown, for such a good life, they were thrown from their positions. And without proper military training and management, they became confused. This exists. But you cannot say that in 2025 there is anyone who is untrained. Yes, we have certain problems with individual training centers, but overall, the situation has progressed significantly since 2025.
What of the myths are there? The myth that the entire Ukrainian army has almost pricked up its ears to go into reserve.
This is also not true. Yes, we have issues with unauthorized leave from military units. But in most cases, such situations have 2 reasons. The first is inadequate moral and psychological support for the soldiers. The second is certain conflicts within the personnel. Where there are individual conflicts, they were not allowed to recover in time, not given leave, the wife called, the children wore them out, the commander is an idiot. Mostly these people go somewhere to, in a month, they bring the son with their child and return. And there, where People do not have sufficient moral and psychological support. If you translate it literally, it's just that these people, they run away, they are afraid. Why does this happen?
This happens because our army did not understand.
Our military political leadership did not understand that in the year 2025, soldiers are no longer the same as in 2022. In 2022, nothing needed to be explained to anyone. It was enough to say where the enemy was, and that's all. Now you need to work very hard with people. They need explanation. Psychologists are needed there. It's really necessary for officers, commissars to work with personnel, not just keep records.
Now to the paperwork. The Ukrainian paper army, it really exists, and this is not
The myth. The only thing is that sometimes in certain brigades, brigade commanders alleviate the additional burden on company commanders. Because, a company commander is, I think, the toughest job. On one hand, you have to take care of all 150 of your people. On the other hand, you have to fill out all those 11, sometimes more journals. Well, it's clear that it's very rare for one person to do this. So a business-like person is chosen from the personnel. Accordingly, certain questions arise about why this person, why that one. In short, it's all nonsense. We need to put an end to it. The amount of paperwork for commanders should be reduced, and they should interact more with the personnel and focus more on commanding.
What other myths have we not discussed?
Well, again, if one needs to clearly understand why mythology always exists in Europe, but sometimes it is harmful.
There are two examples of myths. The first myth is the one that existed in the Ukrainian army in 2023. That now we will have American weapons, the Russians will be scared and run away. The scariest thing was that senior commanders believed in this. All planning was based on the idea that the Russians would just see us at night and run away. They didn't run away. It ended as ended. This is a myth that we ourselves believed. And because of this, many people died and equipment was destroyed. Ultimately, this work is not needed by anyone. But
I don't remember, about 6 or 7 brigades were really hit hard.
Moreover, I still can't understand why this was done. Because by the third day, it was already clear that we couldn't break through the Surovikin line. Accordingly,
this needs to end. Nevertheless, there was this myth. Our senior commanders believed in it, most of the soldiers believed in it, and they paid for it. And the second myth, yes, that a Bradley can destroy a Russian tank. It is very good for boosting the morale of our army, but it is very bad if the crews of the Bradleys start to believe in this myth. Because from the Bushmaster with the 25 caliber, it is impossible to destroy that which one crew from the 47th Brat managed, which is the crew of fighter Havrilia Serhit.
Well, it was not repeated anymore.
So he's lucky to.
So that's why they were lucky. No. Moreover, it's not the same now. If we manage to equip the Bradley with anti-tank weapons like Tau 3, which means laser guided, well, there's still a chance. Tau 2 with to that vegetation under the conditions around the landing, it will not work. Simply, therefore, myths are needed. But the main thing is not to believe in them too much. Again, another myth is that those fighters who did not join the armed forces are ready to flee or something like that. They looked at Trump's statement and the morale fell. Well, firstly, Ukrainian soldiers don't care at all what Trump says. In general, they don't care about many things. In general, they usually do not listen to anyone except the commander directly. That's first. Secondly, we need to acknowledge that due to the absence of official centralized propaganda in Ukraine, we have problems not with the army spirit, which is still ready to fight and which is still ready to win with a sufficient amount of enemy destruction means. Well, of course, if we remove a few volunteer generals, but the big problem now is with the morale of society. Those who are sitting in the rear, why is this happening? Because our state has not been able to explain one simple truth to our wonderful Ukrainian society. We must win.
Otherwise, in every house, there will be buche. Well, this is a sheer decline. A mean trying to sit it out there next to his woman with armor, without armor, paying the military commissar, not paying him. This will all end quite badly if Moscow comes. In the best case, they won't shoot him. Maybe he'll even be lucky and rape his wife. But the fact that sooner or later he will be conscripted into the Russian army under an assault landing is a fact, because the Russian army can no longer stop. They have switched to a military track, sorry. They have switched to a military track. It's like a train, it's a locomotive. It's speeding, it can't brake.
Therefore,
it is a myth that the Ukrainian army is afraid of something. Just like it is a myth that Ukrainian society is not afraid of anything. The problem, as always, is that the authorities do not tell the truth to the people. They constantly try to reassure, constantly try to convince that someday, tomorrow, there will be peace. Here, we have this. We have a victory plan, a resilience plan, a 25th plan, right? Well,
Although I really don't understand where this attraction to the word plan comes from, but all right.
But
It's all a mirage, a fata morgana.
A plan is not bad, but you need to be realistic.
well, a plan is good when you have it in your pocket, right? But we have already had, as far as I remember, 3 peace agreements with the Russians. Minsk 1, Minsk 2, Minsk 3, which is sometimes also called Paris 1. The last agreement with them was in 2019, in December. In the year 2020, we started dismantling our army there. And in 2021, we began demining. And in 2022, we gradually started getting ready to fight. And very quietly. So even the soldiers did not realize.
so this war on
For another decade, there will be truces, there will be peace, but it will all end with a new wave of war. Ukraine will be very lucky if at some point God looks kindly upon us, hears our prayers, and the Russians simply shift their focus from Ukraine to the Baltic countries, despite all my love for Lithuanians, Latvians, and Estonians. Let's look each other in the eye. The NATO countries are not ready. NATO is not ready for war. The proposal to stand, place their troops between Ukrainians and Russians at the Bozetnia training ground, causes panic both in the French and the British. Why? They realize the combat readiness of their units. They understand that this unit will last half an hour in battle, because they will put 30,000 there, 30,000 across the whole front.
Divide it into 100 meters.
That is, no one wants to say it out loud, but Europe cannot fight either.
When did Europe last go to war?
Well, it seems in 41 very incompetently. Well, honestly, I apologize. I don't want to offend anyone, but Charles de Gaulle's merit is that by minimally using French forces and resources, he got involved in any negotiations, and France was recognized as a victorious country. But by and large, things change very quickly. Therefore, Europe hasn't fought successfully for a very long time.
They do not understand modern warfare. They do not realize the challenge, and they are not preparing.
There are some sporadic actions caused by the fact that in every country there are competent generals who force political leadership to start restructuring. But even from a logical point of view, it is not beneficial for Russians to fight with Ukrainians because they only meet death with us. And in the Baltic countries, I don't know. Well, in 1.5 hours, tanks will be in Tallinn.
That is money from Europe now, weapons, Ukraine is fighting. This way victory is possible.
Well, yes, Europe faces a rather simple choice. Either weapons and money for the Ukrainians, well, or large cemeteries of the hell of occupied territories among their own citizens. Time is passing. A year and a half. Well, Ukraine is holding back
all this Neo-Ku Klux Klan for now.
When will Ukraine be unable to do this? Question.
Maybe the Russians just got smarter and will realize that it's good, meaning they need to stop here now.
Regroup.
I'm not ready to say, but what is before the Europeans?
Right now, there is a direct choice: aid to Ukraine or death. Well, objectively, because the Americans will do everything to prevent their soldiers from dying in Europe. This is Trump's position. That's why, firstly, it was quite clearly stated by our president that there will be no American troops in Ukraine. Similarly, if we now look at those, what is called the strategic regrouping of NATO forces, which is happening as the Americans begin to pull back from the Russian-NATO border. Well, it seems to me that Europe needs to think about how much time they have left before a great war.
And the United States, yes, they do not want to fight, but they also the United States needs to understand that if there is a big war in Europe, they won't be able to maneuver out of it. They will have to help somehow, and that will involve a lot of money.
Of course, because Europe is a large market.
There will be a struggle for the market, and sooner or later,
Anyway, American capital will start fighting for European capital. Speaking quite cynically, America will still be drawn into this war. For now, it's possible to buy time with money and weapons.
again, with weapons they manufacture in advance. This primarily supports the American manufacturer. If this doesn't happen, well, fine. Well, most likely bad for the Americans. Why? America could have intervened in European affairs, well, let's call it in 37, 38. And if it had happened, if they were able to keep Hitler within certain boundaries, then probably there wouldn't have been that 500,000 American soldiers who later died in the Second World War. They simply wouldn't have been there. That is, for a policy mistake, to American people, fine, with blood. If the lesson is not learned, accordingly, it repeats.
And also it must be said that China and North Korea, Iran, they are learning new technologies from the Russians. The United States now,
well, they are missing such an opportunity.
They are not learning.
I don't see them learning on such a large scale. Yes, as far as I know, discussions are taking place, which units there will be more effective now. The Americans are studying our experience and trying to create so-called integrated company tactical groups, where infantry in coordination with mortars and drones performs a specific tactical task, and it is effective. That is, they are trying to understand, but the understanding of the application of drones of various types at the level of the strength of unmanned systems in Ukraine, of course, they do not have. Now, at any training, the armed forces of the United States, the armed forces of Ukraine, the Americans will analyze from start to finish. Why? Because Ukrainians have experience.
well, of course, experience is very important, and it is not enough to have warehouses with these drones if you do not know how to use them.
So even, look, you can simply know how to lift it. You can simply teach people to strike. But still, you need these people to get experience so they make mistakes a few times there. Understand? Realize their errors. So they understand what a military stump is. Excuse me. Now an American soldier will show the
Into directs without rotation. Infantry, ragged heads, practices, everyone, well, everyone.
what will we get? And if we multiply it by the number of losses comparable to those suffered by the Ukrainians, then what will you get from this brigade? What kind of training will it have? How much will our American brothers lose their minds? Therefore, we cannot take it lightly. Now, the Ukrainian army is this gathering, maybe slightly scratched, but still a bulldog. Yes, someone is missing an eye, someone is missing an ear, someone is tempted, but overall, this army can grab onto the throat and cut anyone's throat.
And the American army resembles a big car mastiff. Like the ones there, and has strong jaws, strong this. But it was raised in some kind of, in soft conditions, in home conditions. Yes, he likes to eat. He doesn't like to gnaw on a bone anymore. He likes a bone from the store. He likes, like this dog, yes, to have his belly scratched. This is the US Army. They like to fight with comfort. But there will be no comfort. You will have to fight with rats for your piece of bread. The ration pack that you forgot to eat in the morning.
There will be hell.
It seems to me that a certain position of Trump, who is trying to delay as much as possible the involvement of American troops in the war, is somewhat subjective. He understands that it will be worse than in Vietnam.
However, it is also necessary to understand that global evil is gaining strength, gaining speed, and we are not. And they will simply devour us.
And this is necessary. This is the very idea, the thought that needs to be conveyed to, listen, where are our congressmen? We've already said this. How can you not effectively cooperate with allies?
Koreans provide them with live meat, infantry. Yes, Iran supplies them with drones. China provides them with chips. America supplies them with what their allies do not.
Well, that's true.
Well, half of the chips in Russia's missiles, they are made in Texas. That's no secret to anyone. Yes, they get there through intermediary firms. Yes, they get there through Turkey, Azerbaijan, the Netherlands, among others. Yes, that's all there. But if I know this, then don't they know about it in the State Department? They know perfectly well why they aren't doing anything. That's why it turns out that the Russians have North Korea, Iran, and China, and the Ukrainians have a frightened Europe. Over there, France with Great Britain are trying to inflate. It seems to come out ineptly. And Trump is,
well, the mood is like that. Depends. It very much depends on the weather.
I will say, if our stronghold falls, it will not be good for anyone. And I don't think that Americans will feel better knowing that in the next war, they will not have Ukrainian allies.
There is still an opportunity to change something. There is still an opportunity, but
there is not much time. There is no more. And
sorry, during the last one, when we had the first allocations in September 24th, we just called it a number, 2 years.
Right now, I say 1.5.
It's already been 1.5. Well, because September was half a year. Yes, that's it.
Well, with the current dynamics, we don't know. Maybe there will be a revolution in Russia tomorrow, or the Americans will finally remember that they are our allies and provide an insufficient amount of weapons. Or maybe the Europeans will find the courage to join this fight in some way. And then everything will change. But with the dynamics we've seen in the last half year,
well,
the prospects are not bright.
all right. Well, let's hope that we can convey this idea to our senators, congressmen, and President Trump once again. It seems to me he is slowly moving in the right direction, very slowly, but we are pushing him there enough. Thank you, Mykola.